All right, so let's go ahead and get started. It is 7 o'clock, which means it's time for Model Monday. It's an exciting time of the week here at the Milwaukee Makerspace, and I feel extra enthusiastic because there's so many people here live, as well as folks joining us live on the interweb. Let's see if I can find my live on the interweb people. Here are live on the interweb folks. Hello, hello. So today, um, we're gonna kind of do a little overview, quick overview of Fusion 360 because we got a lot of new folks, and I want to be friendly to our new people. Um, and then I want to focus on what I think is the most important thing and often overlooked in Fusion is sketching. So, we want to make three-dimensional shapes, and we'll make a three-dimensional shape by the end of class today for sure. However, I really want to talk about sketches because I think those fundamentals of like knowing how to make a two-dimensional form is essential for making it three-dimensional later, right? And like I said, we'll make something three-dimensional by the end of class, but I think sketching is a good beginner skill to focus on, let's say. So, um, just as an overview of the Fusion 360 environment here, so we've got kind of a blank slate in front of us. In fact, let me fill this blank slate with something just so it's a little bit easier to understand some of these areas that I'm going to point out. We'll find our Model Monday folder and we'll open up our logo, which I probably should have done before class. Otherwise, how will you know where you are? This is how long we've been doing Model Monday. There's a lot of projects in this folder. So many projects that I can't find the text to. Is that it? That's it. That's last week's project. That'll do. All right. So our drawing environment here starts off pretty blank. So when we start a blank document, there's not a whole lot to look at. We have our kind of drawing workspace out here in the middle. Up in the top right-hand corner is our navigation cube. So as I hover my mouse over that cube, you can see that I can click on any object or any face that highlights blue, and we spin around to see that. If I bring up our file that's actually got something in it, you can see I can hover over this corner. It turns blue, so I can click on that. And then I spin right around so I can see that corner. I can hover over this word top. I can click on it, and I spin around so I'm looking at the top. If I'm looking at a side of this cube, in addition to these little corner tabs, which spin us around so we're kind of like looking at the right side, or spin us around so we're looking at the front here now, I also have these rotational views here. So I can rotate the view in any way that makes sense for me here. I think that, Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, I don't know, 75% of getting started in Fusion is learning how to navigate around and getting used to like moving around your 3D environment.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Making sure what part of the menu you're in. Because some stuff that works when you're in sketching doesn't work if you click on sheet metal or something else.
That's a good tip.
Remember where you are and what you can do where you are.
Everywhere you go, there you are. You just got to remember that right there. Yeah. So navigating around is one of the first hurdles that you got to jump over here. So, in addition to this navigation cube and moving around, I also have a bunch of tools down here at the bottom. And the tools down at the bottom, do I need to admit somebody? Nope, we're good. The tools down here at the bottom, I don't use a whole lot. And that being because this first tool, the orbit tool, I use the navigation cube for that. So the orbit tool does the same thing as the navigation tool does, or the navigation cube. It lets me move around my drawing environment here.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why is that? Like, that
navigation cube, every time I grab it, stuff like starts spinning around, and it's not very easy to get the orientation you want.
Yeah, so I find if you're dragging your mouse, if you click and drag on this navigation cube, it moves your model around in a more granular way. And that works better when you're clicking and dragging and moving your mouse in the towards the window. So if I move my mouse outside of the Fusion 360 window, then that's when I start having weird things happen, is when my mouse moves outside of that.
So what's the difference between those little corners and edges in the front face, side face, all that?
So the edges and the corners, I can click on anything, click and drag on anything that'll highlight blue, and it affects it all the same way. If I just click on any blue object or any blue thing that'll highlight on this navigation cube, it shows me different angles of the model. So down here in the bottom, we've also got a pan tool, and panning lets me just kind of pan left or right, or pan up and down. Maybe that's kind of self-explanatory there, a pan tool. Any of the tools down here, if you grab a hold of them, you have to hit the escape key to put them away. So it kind of won't let you click on anything. If you've got that pan tool, it won't let you do some things unless you hit the escape key to kind of put that pan tool away. There's a zoom in and out down here. I don't use those a whole lot because I use the trackpad on my laptop. So I can zoom in and out with the trackpad on my laptop. I think you can do this with the scroll wheel on your mouse. So you can zoom in and out that way. And a lot of what we'll end up doing here is, when we make things three-dimensional, is we'll zoom out and we'll zoom into another area and we'll do some work over here, or we'll zoom out and we'll rotate our view around, and then we'll zoom into another area. And you'll see my view sometimes will do that kind of weird spinny thing. And that's just because, like, I'll move my mouse somewhere where Fusion loses it, and you just got to kind of like get your bearings again, figure out where you are, and start from scratch, kind of basically. So as we start drawing things, as we start modeling things, a couple of things will happen. So as we start using the tools up here at the top to create, first, in general, we start by creating two-dimensional sketches. And then we take those two-dimensional sketches and we make them three-dimensional. But when we start making a two-dimensional sketch, we'll have a folder that pops up in our browser. So the browser is often your top or your left-hand side of your screen here. Right now, this blank document just has an origin in it. But we also, once we start making two-dimensional objects, we'll get a sketches folder. And in that sketches folder will be all of the two-dimensional sketches that make up this file here. I encourage people to be better at this than I am, and we'll talk about this as we draw. But sketch 1 or sketch 2 and 3 and 4 are terrible names for sketches, and you should not name your sketches that. These are the default names that Fusion gives you, but you should get in the habit of naming your sketches.
Question.
Yeah.
If you create, I made a sketch yesterday and I put it somewhere else. Is it possible to move it from there into the sketch folder?
To move a sketch from one, like.
Well, I think I made it. It was in some other folder. So I deleted it, made sure I was in the right folder when I created it. Because it'll kind of create it whatever folder you're in, right?
It will.
Can
Yeah.
you move it once it's there?
Not very. No, not really. For those of you joining us online, if you wouldn't mind muting, that would be great, because I can hear somebody talking in the background, and you'll be talking in the recording as well. So, all right, thank you. All right, so as we continue, as we make those two-dimensional sketches into three-dimensional shapes, then we'll have a bodies folder that pops up in our bodies folder. We'll have all of our bodies that we will once again be diligent at naming. See, I named this one Body 4, and that was a great name before it because it's the Y. So obviously, when you see Body 4, you're like, oh, that's the Y. No, it's because I did not name that body. And again, we'll be better at this in practice as we start making some real life things. The last thing that I'll point out here before we actually jump in and start making the sketches, as we, in addition to the browser kind of populating with folders and sketches and bodies, oh my, we will have in the bottom of our screen, our timeline will fill up with icons as well. So right now, this is a blank area down here for you guys and girls. The icons here represent the steps that I took in order to get to where I'm at. So Fusion 360 is a parametric design software. So that means that at any point you can go back in time using the timeline down here at the bottom, and you can change something that you did in a sketch or an extrusion. And then when you come into the present, it will automatically update in theory. Sometimes it works better in theory than it does in practice, but there are ways that we can help that work better. So let's get started. Today, I thought a good sketching project for us would be to sketch an airfoil for a wing. So I know Mike is into aerodynamics. He's been 3D printing some cool stuff, and I have been wanting to build a scale model of an airplane because there's a competition coming this summer, and I'd like to participate in it. So we're gonna sketch an airfoil. In order to sketch an airfoil, there are two ways that we can go about sketching in general. So the first way is to find a drawing that has some sort of dimensions on it. Now, these dimensions are just vague dimensions, and we're going to enter in dimensions in their stead, in their absence, let's say. But to find a drawing with dimensions or to measure a thing that you got in front of you and then make your sketch from those dimensions. So what do I mean by that? Let's make a sketch. So from the Create menu here, we're going to go ahead and choose the Create Sketch option. So it's the second option from the top there. And if we choose this Create Sketch option, it first wants us to pick a drawing surface to draw on. Go ahead.
What units are you working in, and what's your home view?
That is a fine question. So in this class in general, I tend to draw in freedom units. In freedom units, so otherwise known as inches, or the imperial system. So if your head works in the metric system, I believe that international standards exist, but I will not acknowledge them during the hours between 6 and 8. So so if you want to change your units, you just have to spin down your document settings window here, or little triangle. And then if I hover over units, this little icon appears next to it. I can click on that icon, and then you can change it to freedom units, which I have here. That's my default. I have this little checkbox checked. So if you want to set that as your default, you can feel free to do that as well. Otherwise, like I said, I know that there's something called the metric system that everybody else uses, and they think they're so cool because they do the same measurement as the rest of the world. But this is America, Jack.
If your home view is C axis up,
It is. And, honestly, I don't change that too much. This home, I don't find myself clicking on this home icon very often. If I right click on it and I want to say, I think I can say go home. But the precise orientation of this cube doesn't really matter a whole lot. When you talk about machining stuff, then your orientation matters a whole lot, but that's a whole different coordinate system that you set up yourself. So I'm going to, like I said, go ahead and click on Create.
How is it that you have the Z-axis up? Z-axis for me is off to the left, but then I see the front here.
You see the top at the top where your Z
No, I see
axis?
the front just like you do, but instead of Z, I see Y.
Oh.
No, I don't see any S, Y.
I don't know.
It's like this
Yeah, yours
way. This
looks
time you
like,
get top, I guess it doesn't
yeah. Now, like any of these, I can spin around to the front here, and if I right click on my navigation cube on the front there, I can say set current view as either top or front. So if I set my front view as top, um, your navigation cube might look more like that. But again, this doesn't really matter a whole lot to our, because the orientation we're in can always be changed later. So I'll click on the create icon or create menu here, and I'll come down and choose create sketch. And now the first thing that it wants us to do here is to pick a two-dimensional surface that we're making the sketch on. So we've got a three-dimensional world out in front of us. You can imagine this drawing world here like this room. It would be easy for me to take a marker and start drawing on this wall or drawing on the carpet. But I couldn't just start drawing with a marker out in the middle of the room here. But Fusion kind of gives us these drawing surfaces right off the bat to start with. And you can imagine these as kind of being walls and a ceiling or a floor here. So I can pick any one of these drawing surfaces to draw on. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. I tend to pick the front surface just as a rule of thumb. And for me, that's the surface between the X and the Y axis, the red and the green axis. But again, it doesn't really matter a whole lot which drawing surface you choose to start with here. And once I click and place that icon, now we've got a bunch of things that change here. So right now, because we're creating a sketch, we're what's known as editing a sketch. So when you're editing a sketch, there are a couple of flags, let's say, that you're editing a sketch. So we've got our sketch palette here. We've got this window that says sketch palette in it. And all of our tools across the top have changed. So where previously we had three-dimensional tools, we now have two-dimensional tools all at the top here. So these are all two-dimensional sketching tools for creating a sketch here. And we've also got our finished sketch icon up here in the top right-hand corner. So we can now start using some of the sketch tools. So from the create menu, if I go ahead and grab, for example, let's go ahead and grab this 2-point rectangle option. I'm sorry, 2-point circle. So if I go down to circle and then 2-point circle, one of the things I like about Fusion that I think that makes Fusion beginner friendly is it gives you tool tips for almost everything. So if I'm ever curious or don't know what to do, I can just kind of stop moving my mouse and Fusion will tell me what to do. And I'm really good at following directions. So, and a lot of these tool tips, some of them show you pictures, but they not only tell you what the tool does, but how to use it. So this one creates a circle defined by 2 points, and then it tells me how to use it. And the way that I use this tool is to specify 2 points on the diameter of the circle. So if I click to choose that option, the 2-point circle option, and I'm going to place and then now if I don't know what to do, if I just stop moving my mouse, Fusion pops up with a little tooltip here. It's like Clippy from the old days of Microsoft, the little paper clip. It's going to be like, place the first point on diameter. So if I click right here at the origin, at the middle of my drawing surface, trying plane is a better word to call it, I'll place that right there. And now it's not a click and drag, it's a click and move. So I've clicked, and now I'm just going to move my mouse out. And now I could click to place the next point of this circle. However, whenever I encourage people to use the rule of thumb that when you see numbers, you should just let go of your mouse, and now you should embrace those numbers. It's Pi Day, so we're embracing numbers of all kinds today. Um, in fact, well, let's just make this a 1-inch circle. I was going to say we should make it 3.14 inches, but that would be not a very good idea for this particular sketch. Um, and it's a circle, so it's already pi, right? We don't need to add pi to the number here. It's already pi. All right, so if I just make that 1 inch, I will say you can, even though our units right now are inches, if I wanted to, 1 inch is like, what is that, 10? It's like 2.54 centimeters. Yeah. So you can just type in another unit there if you feel like it, and draw with whatever units you want to, even though our units are set to inches here. I am just going to stick with 1. And then I'm going to place the second point of my circle. Or actually, when I type in a distance there of 1 inch, I can just hit enter now. So now I've got a nice 1-inch diameter circle. If I wanted to, I could move that measurement around. Sometimes you'll have to move these measurements so they can be more visible, right? But outside the circle is going to be fine. And the other thing that if I wanted to, I could double click and I could change this measurement. So I could double click and change it to 2 if I wanted to. I don't need to because 1 inch is just fine. But just know that you can change those measurements just by double clicking on that measurement, and then you can change it to whatever you want to. Let's make another part of the sketch. So I'd like to make a line that goes from this circle backwards, and I'd like to make that line tangent to this circle. So how will we do that? So let's go ahead and find the line tool first. So if I click on the Create menu, and the very top option is Line. And now if I stop moving my mouse, it'll tell me, oh, I'm supposed to place the first point in my line. I'm going to zoom in here so this circle is a little bit bigger. And I'm purposefully going to place this line not tangent to this circle because I'm going to make it tangent later. And I suppose I could show you how to do it both ways. So I'm going to take this line and draw it out. 6 inches seems like a good distance to me. And I'm going to hit enter here. Now my line is definitely not tangent to my circle, but we've got a whole section, a whole menu that is dedicated to constraints. And these constraints are ways to force your sketch into certain rules. You can apply rules after the fact, let's say. So, for example, there is a constraint called the tangent constraint. And if I choose this tangent constraint option here, and I pick the circle that I want something to be tangent to, and then click on the line, it's going to go ahead and make that tangent for me. So it's going to add this tangent constraint right here. That little icon is my tangent constraint icon, and now those things are always going to be tangent to each other. Let's make another kind of line here. So from the create, oh yeah, go ahead.
Mine jumped up off the axis. Is there a way to move it back down?
There is. So right now our sketch is not fully constrained, so things can move around a little bit. And if we wanted to, we could. I think we can fully constrain this sketch as is. So the sketch is constrained in dimension right now, but it's not really constrained in space. So it's not, it can move around in space a little bit here. I bet if we add a line, so if we click on the Create menu and we add a line that goes from the center of the circle here to our origin, at whatever angle that's at will be fine. And now if I add to this line a constraint that forces it to be either horizontal or vertical, so, or the other option would be to do a parallel constraint. I bet that would work as well if we choose this parallel constraint. And I'm going to pick on this line that I made down here, and I choose that line there. There we go. So now all of our lines turn black, and that means our sketch is fully constrained. So now if we add more constraints here, which we're going to do, everything is like kind of locked in position. So it's not going to shift around in X or Y. The other constraint that I think would work in this case, if I make it wrong again here, is this horizontal vertical constraint. So if I choose this horizontal vertical constraint and I choose this line, I had something selected there. So horizontal, vertical, and I choose this line here. Yeah, so now this line will always only be horizontal. So again, it's like constrained that in space from that circle being able to rotate around that point, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You guys see why that constrained it? Kinda. Does that make sense online? Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead. Well, when you zoom in a lot between the tangent point and the circle. So, yes. Yeah, it's just they're definitely. I think they're definitely connected. It's just for some reason we're looking at it at such a small scale that I don't know. That's a weird thing, but they're definitely connected because it can't be tangent to it if it's not connected. So, all right, cool. So we are going to make the last part of our wing here. So if I click on the Create menu, let's go ahead and choose this spline option. So a spline is a weird kind of curve. A spline is a way to make a curve that is made up of more than one radius. And so somebody here that may be a useful fact for you. So if we choose this fit point spline option, again, Fusion is going to tell us exactly what to do. Here we have to specify the first point. So I'm going to click and I want my first point to be on this circle here. So if I click on that circle and I move my mouse out, I'm going to move my mouse down like, I don't know, a third of the way down this wing that we're kind of making. And I'm going to click and place the next point. And now this is like not a science because we're going to change this later. And then the third point of this spline here is going to be, I'm going to click on the end point of that line down there. So you can see I've got the two radiuses that I've made are the radiuses between and then I have to click on the little checkbox. That's important. So the little checkbox that appears at the end, you can see I can keep moving this and I could continue to click a whole bunch more times. But here I've got a kind of a complex curve here. If I click on this little checkbox, now it's going to finish that spline for me. And like I said, the two radiuses that I've made here are the radiuses between this point and this point. That is one, the radius of one circle, and then the radius between the circle between this point and this point is another circle, and then they're just kind of like tangent already for you here. That's kind of what this spline tool does. The last thing we want to do here on this sketch is to make this spline tangent to this circle. And we can do that with that same tangent constraint that we just used previously here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on constraints. I'll choose the tangent constraint option here. And then I can click on the two circles here. So I'll click on that circle. And then I'll click on our spline. And if I did it right, oh, well, actually it doesn't. Maybe a spline cannot be fully constrained. I wonder if there is a way to fully constrain a spline. Well, that's a good question. So the other end of the spline it's always connected to, what if I specify a distance here? Oh boy, let's go ahead and undo that. We're Maybe it's because this point is not locked in space. It's probably not that big of a deal.
You grab that and move it up and down, it's going to change it, so it's not constrained.
Yeah, so this is not constrained here. I am kind of curious if we can fully constrain a spline though. If I dimension this line to be 1.35, nope. Yeah, a spline, we may not be able to fully constrain a spline, but that's okay. We can kind of move on. We talked about constraints. That's the kind of the key point I wanted to get across, is you can constrain things. All right, so that's one way to make a sketch, right? Is to have measurements. Mike, did you have a question?
I'm just going to say another way of getting the airfoil is using the ellipse function in rectangles.
Oh, I see. So we'd use,
As an example, put like a 1/4 inch by 2-inch rectangle.
so if I go to rectangle and make myself a 2-point rectangle, and you say 1/4 inch.
1/4 inch by 2 inches. The long way.
Like that?
Yes.
So if we make ourselves a rectangle like this,
You mind if I?
not at all.
Okay. And make a 1/4 inch by an 1/8 inch rectangle. 1/4 long, 1/8 inch high.
All right, 125, 125.
Okay, now jump on your ellipse tool.
All right, the ellipse tool might be new for some of you, but good news, Fusion has tool tips. It'll tell you how to do it.
Okay, I think it wants the center point first.
Let's see, place center
Click
point,
there.
yeah.
And click there at the end of your line.
Uh-huh.
Now, okay, click right there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's your leading edge. Now, for the second half of the airfoil, open ellipse again. Okay, click in the center.
Down here?
No, down
here.
here.
All right.
Click there, and click at the end.
All right.
There. And
And now our
click
height is going to be
there.
that. Oh, look at
now
that.
finish the sketch.
Uh-huh.
And you select
Yeah.
these two segments, this segment, extrude it out, and that's a working airfoil.
So this plus this plus this plus, not that, plus this.
Yep.
That's an airfoil right there.
That's a working airfoil. That's
Sweet.
what I use in my boomerangs.
Right on. So, yeah.
Come back.
You're recording this one.
Yep, definitely. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah. Mike, it's ironic. You always tell me to slow down. And you're like, you just drew an airfoil in like 30 seconds. It took me a half hour to get here.
Yeah, but you don't know how many hours it took me.
I would. So that's awesome. So that's one way of making sketches, right? So is to like grab some measurements, kind of pull up some individual sketch tools, right? To create a sketch, and then draw your sketch with measurements that you grab from the real world, right? So the other way, and tell you what, let's point out, I've got a sketches folder here, and I've got a sketch inside of that. It's called Sketch One. And like I said, it's a good habit to get into naming these sketches. This is Mike's super cool airfoil. You guys can't name it that because you don't have Mike's super cool airfoil on your sketch. You'll have to call yours like Carl's kind of lame airfoil. But you can name it whatever you want to. Cool. So the other way to make a sketch here is to do it from a picture. And I had kind of planned to do this before you came in and asked about this. And the way to do it from a picture is first to have a picture. So if I go out to the interweb and I look up, this is an airfoil that I've found in a lot of gliders, and this is the kind of project that I want to do is a glider project. So if you Google the Clark Y airfoil, and you guys can do this here live too. Google this Clark Y airfoil because we'll download a picture that we find from the internet, and I'll give you a second to Google that. And a key note here is you got to find a JPEG file. PNG files are all over the internet, and Fusion won't look at them. So it's got to be not a PNG file. So if we find a Clark Y airfoil here, like for example, this one looks good, and I'm just going to click Save Image As. This is my airfoil. I'm just going to save that onto my computer here. And now I'm going to hide this sketch. So I'm going to insert that photo and then scale it to the right size and then draw on top of it. So if I go ahead and click on this insert option or from the insert menu, if I choose canvas, now this window here will pop up and I'm going to choose to insert the canvas from my computer. I have to navigate to the place I saved it, which I thought was my desktop, but apparently is not. Save image as, desktop, save. Let's try this again. There it is. So there is the image that I just saved. And I'm going to say open. Now, kind of like creating a sketch. So we've got this two-dimensional canvas, right? And we need to choose a surface to put that on, choose a plane to put that on. And I'm going to pick one of these planes that Fusion gives us right off the bat here. So I'll go ahead and choose that as an option. Now I've got some options for scaling this picture up here. And I'm not going to worry too much about these because we're going to be more precise about this in a little bit. But I'm just going to use this corner to scale it up so I can see it. I just need this thing to be visible, clearly visible on the screen. If you've got it so small that you can't see it, then you're not going to be able to scale it later. Yeah, go ahead.
I was trying to download the file, and did you just open the window or something like that? Start a new drawing?
Oh, I did not. I just am making this on the same file. So I just chose in the same file here, I just went to my insert menu and then I said canvas. I'm going to insert a canvas here. And now I'm going to choose to insert the canvas from my computer. And then you'll navigate to wherever you saved that image. The image is in the computer. You just got to get a saw, and then you cut it open, and then you find the image there. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. It's always funny when people say something is in there. It's like it's really not in there. It's more like it's on there, I guess. But language is imprecise, or English is imprecise, let's say, or my use of English is imprecise. All right, and then we're going to place that just on one of these 3 drawing surfaces. So it says here in this canvas window, it says, hey, select a thing. Oh, all right, I can do that. And then we've got our little widget here that we can use to move it. I can move it in some direction. If I need to put this canvas somewhere specific, I can move it up or down. I can rotate it around if I want to. But the thing that we really care about is getting it to be the right scale. So we just need to scale it up right now to a size that we can see. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. And now we've got an airfoil. The airfoil is upside down, but I'm not really concerned about that right now. Like I said, the thing that I really want to do is to make it the right size. So if you've got a picture of your object, you want to be able to scale that picture here in Fusion so it's a precise size, right? So if we spin down this canvases folder, we've now got a canvas here. And the canvas is just named the name of the file, but I'm going to go ahead and change that to be our airfoil canvas. And if I right click on that, I can find that I have this calibrate option here. So now I've got my cursor, and I can, if I start moving my mouse, it's going to say click to place the first point on the canvas. What it wants me to do here is to give it a measurement between 2 points. So if I have this airfoil, say in the real world, or I know how big I want this airfoil to be, I can click at the leading edge of my airfoil, and then I can click at the trailing edge of my airfoil, or between 2 points that you know the measurement of on your sketch or on your picture. And now you can measure that and go, oh, my airfoil is 4 inches. So if I type 4 there and click enter, it's going to scale that up to be a fairly accurate representation of your image. I don't know if I'd use this for a press fit, but you can get pretty close. And now I have an image that I can sketch over the top of. So I've got this canvas. I don't need to try to measure this curve in some way, shape, or form, or measure the leading edge radius. Like I don't need. This is great for things with curves. So now all I have to do is create a new sketch. So I'll click on Create, and I'll come down to Create Sketch. Now I'll specify as the plane I'm creating this sketch on is going to be the same plane that I placed the canvas on. So I'll click, and now I'm creating my sketch again, right? So I've got my sketch palette here, and I've got all my sketching tools up here at the top. Now we learned when we were making the first sketch that a great way to make a complicated curved shape is with the spline tool. So if actually, let's start with a line, because I'm pretty sure that part of this airfoil is a straight line. I just don't know how much of this airfoil is a straight line. So if I choose the Create from the Create menu, if I choose the line option, now I can zoom in and kind of start on the trailing edge of my upside down airfoil here. And this is where it starts to get maybe a little less precise, is like how thick is that line that has been drawn by my canvas. But I can kind of pretty easily see where this line starts to diverge from being straight is probably somewhere right around here. So if I click and place the endpoint of that line, and then I can click on this little green checkbox. So this checkbox pops up whenever you want to complete a line or a spline. And now I can kind of continue the rest of this just by tracing over it. So I think the rest of this is going to be curves. So from the Create menu, I can grab that spline tool that we used, and I can choose this Fit Point Spline option. This, I think, is the easiest spline to use. I don't need to be super precise about this because I can move these points around later. So I can click, and as long as each one of my clicks happens on the line, it will probably be pretty close. So I'm going to keep placing points. And when I'm using this spline tool and tracing this out, I kind of see how far I can go before the spline starts diverging from from the canvas I'm trying to trace. So here I can see this line is still following it pretty good. If I move my mouse out a little bit, the line is still following okay. Once I get out here, we start diverging a little bit. You can see it's kind of diverging a little bit. So that tells me that this curve is closer in here. And again, I'm going to keep going here. If I move my mouse out, it's probably, this might just be all one. Oh, not quite. So somewhere around there is another curve. And then I bet the rest of this is all one. And then to finish my spline, I just have to go ahead and click on that little checkbox there. Now a spline can be tweaked. So we've got all these control points here. We've got these little arms, you could say. I'm going to hit the escape key. Right now I still have the spline tool in my hand. So right now if I click, it's going to want to make another spline. And that's actually not what I want to do. So if I hit the escape key, then I'll put that spline tool away. And now all of these curves can be tweaked. So I can extend these control points out. I can bring them in and kind of push and pull to do whatever it takes for my spline to more carefully fit or more precisely fit the sketch underneath it, the canvas underneath it, I should say. And sometimes you'll have to zoom in, but that looks pretty good. Looks good enough for government work.
Once you have that, could you extrude that then if you wanted to?
Let's do that right now. The last thing we'll do here before we finish class is we spent all this time making two-dimensional shapes. I'm going to name this sketch because we all know I love naming sketches. It's my, actually, this is the Clark. Y Airfoil. So once you've got a fully enclosed shape, and fully enclosed shape is encased on all sides. So like, for example, if I make a quick sketch and my sketch looks like this, and I say finish sketch. Now this shape is not fully enclosed, so I could not extrude this shape because it is not connected here. But this shape is fully enclosed. And we'll turn on Mike's super cool airfoil as well. And I could extrude out any of these enclosed shapes, right? So I'll turn that off for now. So from the create menu, if I go ahead and choose this extrude option, and I choose that shape that we made here that I traced, and I can specify a distance of like 1/8 of an inch. This is a scale model, remember, that I'm making. And an airfoil is just like the individual part of the wing that your fabric or whatever your covering material gets wrapped around, right? You got a bunch of these. So I'm just going to make this 1/8 of an inch right now because it's a scale model. And I'll say OK. And now we've got a three-dimensional shape here that we've made. You know what? I want to extrude Mike's airfoil too because this is a cool shape too. So if I grab my extrude tool again, and I'll choose, now here we've got an airfoil that's divided by some lines. So we've got to choose more than one of these enclosed shapes. And again, 1/8 of an inch. So there we go. We got a couple of airfoils that we drew for the sake of making them appear together. I'm going to use the move tool and turn off my sketches. There we go. We got a couple of airfoil shapes. And more importantly, we did some sketching. We learned how to maybe a little bit better use those two-dimensional sketching tools. And, keep coming to class. I encourage you to come. I know people learn a little bit more every time. They may not be all new knowledge every time you come, but there's bound to be one or two little tidbits that you pick up. So next time I think I want to continue this little model airplane project, and I think we'll extend out this airfoil and make it into a wing shape. So we'll have a wing. So we'll use the pattern tool. That'll be a fun tool to use. We might make a surface. That might be fun. But yeah, wing shape or like airplane model shape in a couple weeks. Any questions before we finish up?
Yeah, that's where you grab the extrude tool.
Ah, perfect. So when you're no longer editing a sketch, this is what Mike pointed out at the beginning, is like knowing when you're editing a sketch. If I click on the create menu, I can choose this extrude option, the create menu, and then I can choose extrude. Now, if you don't see extrude in perfect, that is it. So right now you are editing a sketch. So in order to finish that sketch, there's a couple ways to do that. You can either click on the finish sketch button here in your sketch palette, or in the top right hand corner of the screen, there's this little green checkbox, and we can click finish sketch there. Both of them will do the same thing. And now we get back to that area where we can extrude out a shape. So if I choose create and then extrude, then we can choose the shape that we're going to extrude. In our case, it's this guy right here. Or if you made the ellipse wing. And then you have to specify a distance here over in our extrude dialog box. And again, I went with 1/8 of an inch because in freedom units, 0.125 is a round number. Go figure that out. I'm just going to say OK there. And there we go. At the beginning, I mentioned that Fusion was a parametric design software, right? And as you saw, as we started making these, we've got down at the bottom a bunch of icons that have appeared down here. Now, for example, this first extrude I did, if I right click on this, I can say edit feature. And now I kind of go back in time because I made a couple of extrudes here. I go back in time to when I was making that extrude and I could change something about it. The same way as this sketch here, this very first sketch I made, if I right click on this feature down in my timeline and I choose edit sketch, now I go back in time to when I was making this sketch and I could make this wing, let's make it exaggerated so it looks completely different. I can make it 12 inches and say finish sketch. Oh, that's interesting. How come it didn't make it? Did I not save it right? This is why I say sometimes it works. That's my Clark Airfoil. Oh, it's because I didn't actually extrude that sketch. The only sketch that I extruded was the one I traced, and Mike's sketch. So if we go back here and change, then we'll make that 6 again. We got to change something about a sketch that I actually extruded. So let's make this wildly different. Make that 6 inches and say finish sketch. Now when we come back into the present, now you can see that dimension is updated in the extrusion that we did. And it's not always safe to go, way back to the first sketch you made and make a change. Sometimes unpredictable things will happen. So I certainly encourage people to draw things right the first time. But, some changes are possible.
Can you delete an old sketch from there?
You can delete sketches. However, I would discourage deletion. So if you absolutely need to get rid of something, like over here, I would certainly choose to hide a sketch before I remove it. I would almost never delete a sketch. I would almost never delete anything. The preferred method that I have, I don't even think it gives you an option for removing for a sketch. But there is an option. Oh yeah, if you suppress it, I don't know if it gets rid of all the features in the timeline that may have come from it. But like a body, for example, instead of deleting a body, I would always choose this remove option. Um, if I choose this remove option, what it does is it puts another icon down here in my timeline. So sometimes you'll make a body and then it's got some two-dimensional face on it. So then I choose to extrude something from this body. So I'm extruding from the body here. I'm not extruding from the sketch. And this might be a little over the top for some people, so I apologize. I'm going to make it a new body and I'll say okay. Now, this body that I just made, which I totally named body 3, was created based on body 2. So if I delete body 2 from the timeline, then Marty McFly's mother and his father never got together at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, and they never made Marty McFly. So then you get here, if I delete this, then you get Marty's ghosted hand. Oh no, it didn't do it. But you'll get things down here will appear red or yellow. So yeah, it's like, hey, where's my dad? So instead of deleting, I would always say remove is a better option.
I like your analogy.
So that's it. We'll bring an end to this recording. Do you guys have any questions at home, Harold or Mike? Anybody? No? Excellent. Yeah, we'll keep going our wing design or our model plane design next week. So we'll hope to see you guys in a week. All right, thanks, guys.
So
Bye.
is it okay to delete the canvas then?